Very good. Thank you, Danny. Okay, so before we start this presentation, I want to ask you by raise of hands, how many of you don't really know much about your options in terms of Social Security? Okay? And how many of you kind of know, but you want to validate what you know? Okay, so we have both. Very good. Okay, so let's start the presentation. Before we start the presentation, I want to give you a new perspective of where Social Security falls in your life at this moment. Social Security is a conversation that has to do with your retirement, where in this conversation you have the 60-year-old you talking to the 80-year-old you. And in that dialogue, you want to have a little bit of negotiation so that your needs as a young 60-year-old you is taken care of, but also the needs of the 80-year-old you are taken care of. Because the 80-year-old you is not going to remember, is not going to understand concepts the way you do today. So it's worth our time to learn your options so that later on, the income that you negotiate for the 80-year-old you is going to be simple, is easy, and is going to be secure. The whole idea is that we have a win-win. How does that sound? Good? Okay. So I will have to make a couple of disclosures. I am not here to give you any legal advice as far as taxes. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. I cannot advise you on legal matters. And I'm not going to give you any investment advice. This is educational. It's all about Social Security. Okay, so the first 5 minutes, we're going to have a little fun learning about the early history of Social Security. And the bulk of the presentation is going to cover common questions that people have. Then I'm going to show you examples of options, and I'm going to give you the best strategies, how to utilize them for yourself. And I'm also going to talk about what happens if you are collecting your benefits and you're working or a good opportunity shows up, right? What are the pros and cons? And I'm also going to talk about taxes. So by the end of this presentation, you will have a much better picture of what's best for you. We're good? Okay. So, let's go back to Social Security early on. Here's President Roosevelt signing the Social Security into a law. And so why was Social Security created in the first place? Well, it was created because it was the result of the 1929. It was the Depression time. The market had crashed. It had the highest unemployment rate, and more than 10,000 banks had collapsed. And so everybody was suffering, but the elderly were hurt the most. They found themselves with no savings, with no emergency funds, so much so that the government had to intervene, and they passed this law with the idea that we can never allow this situation to happen again, so we're going to force people into savings. So you have no saying. Now you're forced to save for your later years. So that's how the Social Security was created. And so here's the first person ever to receive a Social Security benefit. His name was Ernest, and he worked one day right after the program started. So he was a taxi driver, and he had contributed one day's work. Now, how much do you think he got back in a lump sum? $95? 19? 8? Or 17 cents? What's your best guess?
17 cents.
17 cents. So he had contributed $5. That was one day's work. I'm sorry, that was his pay for that day. And he had contributed a nickel. And of that, 17 cents was his lump sum benefit because he just had one day in the Social Security program. Bright new, right? And here's another person who is a really nice case to follow because she was the first person to receive a benefit for life, which is why the program was created. Her name was Auntie Ida. And so she had worked 3 years after the program was created. And she had contributed a total of $24 for all those 3 years. And she received a monthly benefit of $22. Now, she lived 35 years. She died at the age of 100 in 1975. So she received a total of $22,000 by putting $24,000 in. So that's how you can see what Social Security means, right? She contributed 24, but then she collected $22,000, and it helped her until she was 100. Okay. So now let's come back to the present time, and a lot of people want to know, where is Social Security today, and what does it really encompass? Well, Social Security currently has 62 million beneficiaries. That's a big number, isn't it? And of these 62 million beneficiaries, about 45 plus million go to the retired workers and to their dependents, like maybe their minor children or maybe their wives, right? Those would be dependents. And about 10 million plus goes to disabled workers. When you hear someone is on Social Security on disability, well, that's where it's coming from. And also to survivors. When there's a spouse that passes, then the widower gets a survivor benefit, including children if they are minor. So altogether for 2018, there were 62 million beneficiaries, but also on a daily basis, there's between 8,000 to 10,000 people turning age 62, which qualifies you to receive your benefit. So one thing you notice is that back from the 70s all the way to now, survivors and disabled people haven't really changed too much, right? They're receiving more or less the same benefit. But look what happens to the retirees. Look at that change in the curve, right? And that's increasing because there's more and more people that are tapping into these savings, like forced kind of savings. Okay, now the next question is, how is Social Security funded? And before that, I have a question for you. Guess what's number one reason why seniors are filing for bankruptcy today?
Medical bills.
Unexpected medical bills, right? Out of the blue, they just take a lot of everything you saved. Guess what's number two reason? Number two reason you won't even imagine is college debt. You're wondering, how in the world is college debt? Well, that's because your grandchildren come to you, grandpa and grandma, and they say, my mom has a bad credit, my dad has a bad credit, and I really want to go to college. It might be at that moment, I don't know, but I want to go to college. Can you be my co-signer? And what do you say to your grandchildren? Of course you want to help them. Yes, that would be the smart thing to do. You say, of course you want to help them. Where do I sign? And you become their co-signer. Then your grandchild goes to college and realizes that this is not for me, I'm better off working, right? Or sometimes they finish school. But then the creditors, who are they going to come after?
Grandparent.
You. Right? So that's something important to know. There are ways in which you can help your grandchildren that do not compromise your funds. Okay? So, okay. Now, another question that people have often is, how is Social Security funded? And so Social Security, once it was created as a law, it automatically deducts certain percent out of your paycheck. And it goes like this. So 62% is taken out of your paycheck to go into your Social Security. And about 1.45% goes into fund your Medicare. That's if you are working for someone as an employee. but your employer matches that amount. So your employer pays another 6.2% of your income into your Social Security, and the same thing with Medicare. So that's about 12.4. That's 4 savings for you. But what happens if you're a business owner? If you're a business owner, you pay 6.2% of your income as an employee and another 6.2% of your income as an employer. And so what happens is that many times business owners, because they don't like this, you want to put everything into the business, they go to their accountants and try to reduce their taxes, and for a long time it's good. But one day when you turn 60, you realize that your Social Security pool is very small because all those years of tax savings. So if you know people who are just about to start their business, you can carry the message to work this situation and create a level of balance so that the younger you is taken care of, but the older you is also taken care of, okay? Now, you pay this up to an amount, up to $128,000, that was in 2018, but in 2019, you're making these contributions up to this number, $132,900 as an individual. If you make more than that, the excess does not contribute to your Social Security. The idea is that Social Security is a way to force you into savings, but it's not meant to make you rich. If you're making more than that money, you don't need forced savings. You're good on your own, right? So that's, for 2019, is 132 the cup. Okay, now another question is, can I trust the future of Social Security? Well, let's look at what happened in 2017. I don't have the numbers for 2018 yet, but we'll get a little bit of that. In 2017, about $997 billion, with a B, was collected from your paychecks. And about $952 billion were paid out in benefits. Okay? So for 2017, there was still okay. Social Security fund didn't have to tap into the reserves. But then 2018, the picture was different. For 2018, the revenues collected and the benefits that were paid were not the same. So 2018 was the first time, was the next time, not the first time, but the first time in a while where reserves had to be tapped to be able to pay the benefits. And the question is, so what's going to happen in the future, right? And what's going to happen in the future is that by 2034, in another 14 to 15 years, if nothing changes and things continue to be the way they are, there might be about a 21% reduction in benefits. And this is a little bit of a political issue. I don't get into it, but what are our options? Well, that's a little bad joke. So our options are, how can we address this deficit? So there's two kinds of people. Some people say, well, let's resolve this problem by raising the revenues. And the idea is that instead of instead of tapping into the $128,000, by 2019 is $132,000, instead of creating that limit, let's increase this limit so that we're able to collect more funds and put it into the trust. That's one suggestion. Also, they suggest that we'll increase the contributions as a way of resolving the deficit problem. Other people say, no, forget about it. We don't want to pay into the Social Security Trust Fund anymore. Let's tackle this problem from the benefit side. And what they propose is that they raise the retirement age, right? Instead of being 60-something, 66, 65, 67, let's push it to 70. That would allow more money to go into the trust. Or let's use a different calculations for the cost of living increases. But in general, for our purposes, the deficit problem can be fixed. It can be fixed by a reasonable combination of benefit increases and also of revenue modifications. We still have some time, 15, 14 years, this problem will be fixed. Now, this is not the first time that Social Security will go through changes. When Social Security was created, the promise was that it will never be taxed. Now guess what? It's taxed, right? It's been, President Reagan was one of them, Clinton was the second one. So Social Security has already been through changes. And so Social Security will probably change, but it's definitely not going away. Does that satisfy that question? Okay. So let's go to the next question. How do you qualify for a benefit? Well, first of all, to qualify for a benefit, you have to have 40 credits. And what does that mean, 40 credits? Well, 40 credits are more or less the equivalent of about 10 years. So you had to contribute it to the trust fund, to the Social Security fund, at least for 10 years. And it doesn't matter if it was 3 years, then you didn't work, and then you contributed another 4 years, and then you stopped working. As long as you have 10 years, your records will hold the numbers or the number of years that you accumulated. Of course, the more you work, the more you will receive in benefit. The less you work, the less you will receive and benefit. But not everybody is eligible for Social Security. Did you know that? So if you, people who work for the federal government, for example, they don't contribute to the Social Security. They contribute direct into a pension, right? So they will never get a Social Security. Instead, they will get a pension that the federal government offers. Some state plans are the same. State workers, policemen, firemen, that don't get a Social Security. And then some counties might have the same thing too, although almost all have changed by now. But then what happens is that sometimes you have someone who's worked for the federal government for the day, but then for years held this part-time job, night shift, and did something, and for years and years and years contributed to the Social Security as a part-time. So that also accumulates. So some people might get their pension from their full-time job, and they might also get a Social Security from their, I have a client who calls it my beer money, right? So they might collect that. So that's something that it's important to know, that not everybody is eligible to receive Social Security. Okay. By the way, very important reminder. So people also want to know, how do they make the calculation of the benefits? Social Security takes all your working history. Most people work 30 years, 20 years, sometimes 40 years, right? It depends when you started. And then Social Security cherry picks the highest 35 years. And then that's put into your benefit. Okay? And the years that are not as high, what happens to them? They don't go into the formula. Okay. Now the next question that people have is, when can I become eligible for my benefits? Well, the earliest that anybody can get a Social Security benefit is age 62, with one exception, unless your spouse, you lost your spouse. Widowers, they are able to tap into their benefits as early as 60. That's one exception. okay? But then at 62, your benefit is reduced. So when do you get your full benefit? And that's a very important thing to know. When do you get the most out of your benefit? Whatever you put in is what you want to get back. Well, for that, your full retirement age, where you get your full benefit, is calculated based on the year you were born. Those who were born in 1943 to 1954, their full retirement age is 66. That means you will get your full benefit. And from there on, it increases by 2 months. Okay? Now, I want you to remember these 2, 3, 4, whatever number of months you have, because sometimes people say, oh, I'm 66 and 6 months, but I'm going to file a couple of months early. By the time the papers get to Social Security, you run your calculations in your mind. And if for some reason Social Security receives your papers earlier, and there's a reduction, that reduction is permanent. Just because they tap into your paper a couple of days before you got into your full retirement age. So if you have to make a mistake on the other side, not on the earlier side, because it might reduce your benefit. So the months are also important. Okay, and this is a little joke. The first baby boomer has come to collect Social Security. How cute. The first one is cute, but then don't look the rest, right? Okay, so then the next question is, how much will I get? Everybody wants to know, how much will I get? Is it going to be what you see on your paper? Well, it depends. It depends on many things. The first thing, it depends on what's on your earning record. Did you work 10 years? Did you work 20 years? Did you work 40 years? Right? That will determine how much you will receive in benefits. The next factor is, when are you going to claim your benefit? Are you going to wait until your full retirement age, or are you going to claim early? Or maybe you don't want to claim early, or at your full retirement age, you want to wait until the very end. And when is the very end? 70. After 70, you can no longer postpone. So how much you are going to get depends upon when you're going to claim your benefit. And also depends on how are you going to claim. Are you going to claim on your record, or are you going to claim on your spouse's record? Right? Or maybe you're going to claim on your ex-spouse's record. Or maybe you're going to claim on your spouse who passed as a survivor. Right? So it depends on how are you going to claim. That will determine how much you might get. Example, if I claim on my record, I've seen this with some clients. There's this lady, my client, she was going to receive about $600, but she claimed on her first husband's record, and now she's receiving $1,200. That's a big difference for life. So it depends on how you're claiming. And the next aspect is longevity, right? How many years, and how's your health, and how many years are you projecting to live? Let me give you an example. I had a client that we decided that we were going to wait until 70. And then one day he showed up and said, I've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Now, I know I'm going to die, so I'm never going to see this money, but I'm worried about my wife. Does waiting make any sense? Will she have more, or will she have less money because I might file early? That changes everything as well. So you factor that in your decision making, right? That will also determine how much you will get. Are we good so far? Okay, very good. So, by the way, of 2018, if you're already collecting your Social Security, you have received a 2.8 increase, yay, on your Social Security after years of not receiving anything. 2016 to 0, 2017 at 0.7, I think it was. And so the projection is for 2019, they might increase it to 3%, but it's a very big maybe. We don't know. Okay, so now the next question is when should I file? Well, let's look at this example and let's see what will be the best case scenario here. So let's say that this is you. You looked at your statement right down from the Social Security, and it basically says that your full retirement age is 66. At 66, you will get your full benefit of $1,000. That's what it says on your record. Now you begin to think, okay, so I have some options. The earliest I can file is 62, unless I'm a widow or a widower. And the latest that I can postpone is age 70. If I file at 62, my $1,000 is going to be reduced by 25%, right? So, and if I want to wait a little longer and say, no, 62 seems too much, let me do at 64, then you're going to have a different amount. Versus, well, what if I file at 68? So what happens if you file at 68? After your full retirement age, from the time you turn your full retirement age all the way to 70, there is an 8% increase that you get for waiting. Okay? So if you file later, then your benefit went from $1,000 to $1,320. Now think about it. This is for life. If you're only 60-something and you're going to live up to 90s, you're talking about at least a good 30 years. That's a long time, right? So what decision suits me here? And it's a very important decision because Social Security is going to be here whether the market crashes tomorrow or not. You know, whether something happens or not. It's still going to be there, so you want to make the most out of it. Okay, I want you to look at the numbers now. Look at the 750 and look at the 1320. The difference between those two numbers is almost 76%. Is that a significant number? It really is, right? It's almost twice as much, 750 to 13 for life. That's a big difference. Okay, so filing sooner will reduce your benefit and filing later will give you credits. Now, 71% of people file early just because they didn't know about their options. They went to the Social Security office and the people in the office told them, here, why don't you file the papers? You'll get the money today. Oh, sure, why not? And then you get the paper and then later you realize, oh, I didn't know I would get more money if I just waited. Or nobody told me that if I file on my husband or my ex-husband, I would have gotten a better benefit. I just didn't know. Nobody told me that I was able to qualify for, you know, my ex or my spouse or maybe my first husband who passed away. I just didn't know that. You see? So a lot of people leave money on the table, but you're here, so tap yourselves on the shoulder. You're going to get more options and do much better. So the next question is, how do I get my current statement? Up to age 62, all the years of work that you put in are used to calculate your benefit, but it's only a projection. So just the calculation is not accurate. It's an estimate. But the day you turn 62, you become now eligible. The calculations are now accurate. And at that age, you begin to receive the papers on the mail, right? But you can also go to the Social Security website, and there's this little link, My Social Security, and there you create an account. And you can access your record. There's also a telephone number that you can write it down, or I mean, this is going to be recorded so you can have it later. But once you go to the Social Security account, My Social Security account, you create the account, a username and a password, and then you access your record. So the first page has your benefit at your full retirement age. The second page breaks it down how much you will get if you file early, how much you will get if you file at your full retirement age and later, and how much you will get if you become disabled, and how much your spouse will get basically the other beneficiaries and the survivors, including children. If you have children that are minor, up to age 18 or 19, as long as they go to high school, they're entitled to a benefit. So they also become your survivors. So it basically breaks down all the different ways in which you can, your record can be split. And then page number 4. And I want to stop here on this page, and I really want to bring your attention to this page because I've noticed most of the mistakes happen here on page 4. Page 4 has a list of all your working years with all your contributions. And most of us don't really look because it was a long time ago and we don't remember. But I've seen this so many times. One of my clients was missing 16 years. I mean, she had zeros in it. And so she was looking at her benefit and she was saying, it's kind of a small amount. I wonder why. And it never occurred to her that her record was not accurate. Fortunately, she worked with the same accountant all these years, and she's able to retrieve her taxes and just send a letter, or actually better, call Social Security, and they can verify it and they can change it for you. I have another client who had 4 years in a row missing. And he said, I worked since I was a kid and I never not work. How can I have zeros in it? So right away he called the Social Security office. He got really lucky. Don't expect this to happen to you. But he basically said, oh yeah, I work and I made about this much. And they took his word for it. Now that is, I'm guessing that they were able to verify with the IRS rather quick. And they were able to basically replace the numbers. So do yourselves a favor, when you look into your statement, pay attention to this page, and to the best of your knowledge, try to remember, that year, kind of that makes sense. If not, call the Social Security office and tell them, in 1982 all the way to 1987, those numbers are totally not true. And then work that situation out. So you have to be on your own behalf here. And then the next question, of course, is longevity. So question for you guys. How many of you think you're going to live up to age 100? Only 3 people? 4.5? Okay. So I have some news for you. 2017, well, there are so many people that are turning age 100, not just in the country, but throughout the world. By 2050, there's going to be, the projection is 23 million. Now, a lot of them live in, well, guess where Hawaii falls in this list? At the top. Absolutely. So, and also because through technology, there's more possibilities to be able to expand your longevity, right? We actually have a friend who had, he was born with this problem that caused him pain for a long time, and he couldn't really walk too much, and refused completely to do any kind of surgery. And then at the end, the pain was so strong that he decided, all right, I just have to do this surgery. And it was a hip replacement. And they offered him, do you want a plastic replacement, a metal replacement, all these options which were never heard before, right? And he did the hip replacement, and then he was dancing. And he said, I wish I had done this a long time ago. This is the best I felt ever. It's just been great. And so suddenly there's a new, renovated self, re-energized, and a new sense of life and purpose. So he's actually getting older, but he's feeling younger. Right now he wants to work, and now he wants to go dancing, so there's a new window that opened. And a lot of things are basically going in that direction. Okay, so there's the 700 people by mid-century. Okay, so now let's talk about specific examples and what are the best decisions. Let's look at Bob and Mary. Okay, so Bob and Mary, they're both 65, and they're both still working, but they're thinking, what should we do with our Social Security? When do we retire? They're both in good health, which means that they can potentially be here up to age 100. That's another 35 years. And let's pretend for the example that Bob makes about $2,400 in Social Security, and that Mary receives about half of that. Okay, so as we evaluate this case, the first question is, and this is for everybody, when were they born? Based on the answer, we know which direction we're going to go. And the question is, were they born before January 1st, 1954? If the answer is yes, then we do it one way. If the answer is no, then there's another way. In this case, we're going to look at what happens if you were born before January 1st, 1954. Okay, so for the next slides, I'm going to use a software that allows us to do these calculations. It's extremely difficult to do these calculations on a piece of paper. I wouldn't even try that. But I want you to know that I do offer a free review, a Social Security review, and that's because when you see numbers, it really allows you to make a good decision. When the numbers are not there, it's not as clear. Okay, so here's the Mary and Bob. Now follow me on this example. So Bob is right there with his $2,400 benefit at full retirement age. Right? Can you guys see that a little bit? Mm-hmm. And she's half, about 11. Let's say that Bob is going to live up to age 85. When he's going to die a little bit early, right? And the wife is going to live up to age 92, which is more or less the average. Women usually live longer by 5 to 7 years. Okay, so now, because they were born before January 1st, 1954, they qualify for a special strategy called restricted application. Now let's see what happens. If they do this restricted method, this method called restricted application at 66, if they were to file at 66, and then Bob dies at 85, and Mary lives up to 92, in total, they would have received $1,499,000. If they did the year before at age 65, they would have received $1,266,000. The difference between 65 and 66 is $233,000. Is that a significant number for you? Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. If you said, oh, it's only about $10,000, you can ignore that, right? But this is $233,000, and that's just filing from 65, waiting for 1 year, and it creates that big difference. So let's look at what this specific method is. Well, this restricted application works like this. So Mary goes to the Social Security office and basically says, I am here to file on my record. And we're picking Mary because Mary is the one who receives the less amount of Social Security. So we always go with the less amount first. This is just for those who were born before 1954. So Mary goes and says, I'm here to file on my record. And then she does all the paperwork. And right after Mary comes Bob, and Bob says, I'm also here to file, but I am not filing on my record. I repeat, I am not filing on my record. I am here to file on my spouse's record. So he's going to check this little box that says restricted, right? And you're wondering why? Well, because Bob is going to file for a spousal benefit, and for all the years that he receives a spousal, he's going to have his own record increase by 8%. So the first year, he's going to receive an additional 8%. The second year is 16, all the way to 32%. And then when he turns 70, he's going to go back to the Social Security office and he's going to say, now I am here to turn my spousal record off and turn my record on. And he's going to be super happy because now he's getting 32% increase on his benefit for life. Now, it's a double win. He got a spousal benefit while he was waiting, and now he's going to undo the spousal and tap into his own, right? Okay, so now let's look at some numbers and let's see if that's worth it. Okay, so there they are. They're 66. Mary does file on her record. And so together, well, let's see. Mary gets her full benefit, about $1,100. Bob will receive a spousal benefit. And what's the spousal benefit? The spousal benefit is half of the spouse's, half of the benefit of the spouse. So he's only getting half. But that's just until age 70. At 70, now Bob turned the spousal off, turned his on, and look how much it changed. It went from $1,600 to $4,822. Was that worth it? Totally worth it. And now this is going to be for life.
Per month?
Yes, this is per month. Per month, yes. So this is a very important strategy that you should know if you haven't filed yet and you were born before 1954, because if you don't, you might be missing something that could take care of you for the rest of your life. So then what happens is, when Bob dies, remember we were going to kill him at 85, right? Poor guy. So then Mary is the survivor, and how much does she get? Is she going to get two? Is she going to get hers? Is she going to get his? I get that question all the time. The answer is, in this case, the smallest of the two goes away, and the highest of the two stays with the survivor. We're good? So there's a loss. From two, obviously there's a loss, but it's always the one with the less benefit that goes away. Okay.
But Mary will never lose any of her, or her benefit doesn't become less than any.
No, her benefit doesn't become less. She never lost hers, yes.
Even though she's given to Bob.
Yes, that's a very good question. So when you file on your spouse's record, or when you file on your ex-spouse's record, and when you file on your spouse who passed, well, the spouse who passed doesn't count, but the people on the record, they do not experience any reduction in their benefits at all, right? At all. There is no reduction. So if you filed on your spouse or if you file on your ex-husband, you will get half of the benefit. And that half is not going to affect his or her benefit one bit. Okay?
What happens if she dies? He dies.
So if he dies, we're going to have an example about what happens, but just the short answer is, if the benefit goes away, right, the person that passes, that Social Security benefit goes away, the surviving spouse will receive the one out of those two, the one with the highest. So if his was the highest, that will stay with her. If hers was the highest, then it will stay with her. But she's not going to get two. She's only going to get one. Okay. Now, this is the other example if they decided not to do the restrictive strategy because let's say that they didn't know about it and they just went and filed at 65. So if they did that, initially they will get $3,300, $37, and $32. There's no point in this. At no point they're receiving $4,000 like they had in the previous example. So that's the difference between restricted and also between doing it right based on your date of birth. Okay, now I want to bring your attention to another thing that a lot of people don't know because you don't know what you don't know. And it's called the widower tax trap, right? And this is part of the whole retirement planning. So people file and they benefit with a restricted application or not, depending upon when they were born, and they collect their benefits, and then one of the spouses dies, right? And then what happens is before there were 2 benefits, yeah? Now there's only 1. But before there were also 2 taxpayers, and now there's only 1. And the 1 is the one with the highest benefit. And so because now there's only 1 taxpayer, the survivor spouse gets kicked into a higher tax bracket, and now you're just grieving, you lost 1 income, and on top of it you're taxed. It's a very difficult time in life. It's because we just don't know what's on the other side, and it's important that when we're in our 60s, ideally earlier on, and we plant some seeds, knowing that this is what is going to happen. We plant some seeds, you leave them alone, you don't touch them, and when the time is right, you can tap into these extra funds, and so that you're not, you don't feel trapped. Everything I have is taxed now. Right? So it's a good view into the future, and by the way, I do speak about retirement planning, and at the end I'm going to invite you to my next presentation where I talk about the whole picture, the whole retirement thing, not just Social Security. But today we're continuing with Social Security. So let's talk about divorced spouses. So what happens if you have been married before? Can you still benefit from your ex? Yes, you can. But it depends. You have to qualify. If you are 62, you have to be 62. You also had to be married to your ex for at least 10 years. And it doesn't matter when you were married to him. It could have been in your 20s, maybe in your 30s, and then you got divorced. Maybe in your 40s. Doesn't matter. You were married for 10 years. You filed taxes together. It's all there. And also that you are not currently married. You're 62, you're not married, and that your ex-spouse, your ex, is also eligible to Social Security. In other words, that he wasn't like a federal employee, because then there's no Social Security for you.
Do they have to be 62?
Yes, you have to be 62.
And the spouse, the ex-spouse?
And the ex-spouse also has to be 62. Yes, 62. So then, and then on top of that, if you were born before January 1st, 1954, you can do that trick that I show you of filing on your ex, waiting those years, that, that 8 and 8 and 8, and then when you turn 70, you switch off your ex, and yours is already increased by 32. So that's if you were born before 1954. But let's talk about the ex-spouses. So another question that I get is also like, okay, I've been collecting my ex-spouse's benefit, and now I'm thinking to remarry. And so am I going to lose my benefit? And then am I going to get my new husband, or is this like a risky situation? Should I marry it or not? Because, Social Security was designed so that it becomes just 40% of your income. But the reality is that a lot of people just depend upon this, so this becomes a very important decision, right? And so what should you do? Anybody? Okay, for anybody who's been, well, first of all, make sure you have a conversation about the prenuptial. That's the most important thing. And second is, if you were collecting a benefit from your ex-spouse, and now you're going to go into a new marriage, the Social Security program doesn't want to penalize you for getting married. Otherwise, a lot of people would not do it. So you will be able to actually drop the benefit that you had from your ex-husband, and you will immediately be able to receive the benefit from your new husband. But now you have to do the math, right? Because if your ex gave you, well, let's say $1,200, and your new husband might give you $12,000 versus $1,200 versus $800, and this is for life. You think you're going to live up to age 100? What should you do? Love or money? I don't know. So, but it's an important decision to make. It really is. The other question that I get is, well, let's say that you don't have an ex, but you're planning to get married. Would I get a benefit right away, or do I have to wait? How many years do I have to wait? Well, the answer is, if you get married, you do not immediately get a benefit. You have to be married for at least 1 year. And then you qualify for a spousal benefit. Assuming that you haven't filed, because if you already filed, that's it, you're done. Once you file for your Social Security, you cannot undo. It's done. It's a one-time deal. There's only one exception. If you file for Social Security and you go like, oops, oh gosh, I made a mistake, you only have 1 year, and they're very strict, 365 to the dot, not a minute later, that you are able to withdraw your application and make the correction. I had a lady who came to my presentation, and she just didn't know that by getting her benefit from her ex, that she was going to get more compared to hers. She was married to him forever, but he just didn't know, and she had just filed 2 months ago, 2 months before sitting in my presentation. So what did we do? We withdraw the application. She had to send the money back. It's okay, you have to send the money back. And then she applied for the benefit of the ex, which was higher. And she was happy to do that because it made sense. The process takes about 3 months. Anything you do with the Social Security is almost 3 months. But if they take longer, don't worry about it. The Social Security will reimburse you everything they owe you. They will send you a big lump sum. Okay, so that's about divorce benefits. Let's talk about someone who's not married. You're single. So you're single and you're evaluating your options. You're 59, you're in good health, maybe you live up to age 100, you're still working, your full retirement age is 66 years and 8 months, and let's pretend that your benefit is going to be $2,400. Now you're evaluating and you're saying, if I live up to age 95, and if I claim at 62, I would have received about $914,000. But if I waited to age 70, at 95, I would have received $1,288,000, right? And you basically evaluated, but sometimes these numbers are too big. You have to kind of come down to a monthly base. And you go like, what does it mean on a month-to-month basis? Well, if I was, well, let's say I'm 66 now, or 70. If I file at 62 and I'm 70 years old, that means I'm going to have $2,000, about $2,000. Versus at 70, I'm going to have $3,500 on a monthly basis. Now you're saying $2,000 versus $3,500. Now you can kind of relate and go like, okay, maybe it's worth waiting for me, maybe it's not. We're good so far? And then sometimes right in the middle of this, when you're just about to file, comes the possibility, oh, well now should I get married or shouldn't I? Sometimes that happens, right? So that's where this is also important. If I get married, how is this going to change? Another evaluation right there. Okay, now let's talk about a survivor. What happens if you're a widow or widower? So Kathy's 66, she's in good health. She's about to, still working, but she's close to retirement. She gets about $1,500, and her deceased husband, his benefit at his full retirement age would have been $1,800. Okay? So now she's thinking, what should I do? If she files for survivors, how much is she going to get? Well, she's going to get about half of the benefit that Bill would have gotten at his full retirement age, right? So that would be $900 versus hers at 15. But now you think about it and you go like, okay, if I was born before 1954, you know what to do, right? You can tap onto that while yours grow, and when the time is right, off with the survivors, and then you have your 32% increase. But if you're not, then you have to make a decision. Would I get more on my record, then I'm better off waiting, or not? Or is my deceased husband's benefit higher? So that's a question to do, to decide. Okay, here's the example where she's actually using the restricted application. She's getting all that 8%. And then turns off the survivors. So as you can see, the Social Security discussion is not something you decide on your own. It's something that includes your spouses, your exes. People ask me, if I file on my ex, would his or her benefit be affected? What do you think is the answer? No, he might not even know. You know, he might be on the other side of the planet. You haven't talked to him in a long time, and maybe you never want to see him again. Well, he or she might not know and will never know. Social Security will never disclose this information, but you're entitled to it, to half of the benefit, and that person on the record might never find out.
What if you don't know what their benefit is?
And when you call Social Security, they're probably, if you call them directly and you ask them, you know, how much is his benefit so you can compare, they're not going to give you that information because that's considered to be confidential information. But you can call and ask, what will be my spousal, ex-spouse's benefit for me, that applies to me, that I will get on his or her record? They'll give you that because you're eligible, you qualify. You tell them, look, I've been married for 10 years to her, and I'm 62, and I know she was working hard, that's why we got divorced. So now I think she will probably have a very high benefit. But she had to be 62 or older too, right? She has to be at least 62.
Why is that 8%, the 32%, and like that 4-year window? What was the thinking behind that? I could see why they canceled it, because it's pretty expensive, but what was the thinking behind that? Because I'm single, and I want that 30%, but I can't get it because I never got married.
Right.
So I had to like, I'm not eligible for that because I never got married.
So to get the 32%, you don't have to be married, you don't have to be a widow, nothing. It's just waiting from your full retirement age, which is different for everybody. And you just basically say, you know what, I'm going to sit pretty, I'm not going to do anything until I'm 70. And so Social Security is encouraging you to delay that. A lot of it has to do because when Social Security was created back in the 30s, they created the benefits based on their mortality rates. And their mortality time at the time was basically by 65, you're going to be out, right? And that's not the case. You're 60-something, and you feel like many times like a 40 still because it's changing. The new 85 is 65. It's happening to all ages. You look at a 25-year-old, now we call them kids because it used to be 25, used to be a man and a woman. Now we call them kids because there's this longevity that's very real. Very, very real. So Social Security was calculated so that you will live up to age 65. But guess what? Everybody turns 65 today. Yes, people die, but you know, kids die every day, right? You can be 30, you die, accidents happen. But as far as longevity, Social Security is still based on that old calculation. So because of that, they encourage you to wait, to be able to, as an incentive, so that you can delay your benefits. So, yes.
Regarding that restricted application,
Yes.
my husband would qualify for that,
Yes,
but I wouldn't.
yes.
So could he draw on my half?
That's a very good question. So that happens all the time. Either one spouse it just made it to the 1954 and the other spouse didn't, right? Mm-hmm. So can they still do it? Yes. But only one of the two will be able to file for that. Mm-hmm. And now the question is it worth it? Are the numbers worth doing it? Or maybe not? In that particular situation, it's a number question. You have to look at the numbers, and then that's when you decide. I encourage you to take me on my free Social Security consultation, because we look at the numbers, and then you say, oh, I see this number versus that number. And so Social Security, as you can see, is really a conversation for the family, including children. It's something that's also happening as a result of longevity. They call them the Viagra children. Have you heard of that? So what's happening is that people in their 60s have one of the highest rates of divorce. Did you know that? People in their 60s are getting divorced more so than millennials. That was just 2 years compared to a couple of years ago. And so this is a very important time in your life, right? Leaving your job, going into this new phase. So it creates all kinds of problems. Sometimes men and women decide, okay, that's it. I'm gonna change my life. And so in doing that, they get divorced. And oftentimes the man marries a young woman and she wants to have children. And now he's just filing for Social Security and the newborn is there, right? I had a friend, it happened to him. He said, you know, I was planning to retire. Now I had a new baby. I don't know if I should work or not anymore. Do I file for my Social Security or do I wait? Because now this whole thing changed. And so the Viagra babies are basically the kids that are, you're already in your eligible age and you have children. And if you file for your Social Security, your minor children are also entitled to a benefit without hurting yours at all. If you have filed, you will receive, just like a spouse, you will get a benefit. And many times that's what happens. The spouse works or it doesn't work anymore, file for Social Security, and now the non-working wife receives a spousal benefit, and the minor child also receives a benefit. But I want to be very clear. On one single record, you could have the spouse, you can have the ex-spouse, you can have the minor children, but it should never go over 188%. So it will never double the benefit. In other words, you will continue to receive your benefit and your ex-spouse and your current spouse and your children, but when you add it all together, it doesn't amount to a double. Does that make sense? It only goes up to 188. So obviously your other beneficiaries will have a reduced benefit. So that's Social Security. Okay. So for younger people, those who missed out on the 1954 and those who were born later on, like in the after all the who are basically at full retirement age after 67, what do we have left? Well, basically, what we have left is just try to delay as much as we can and basically do a lot more planning on our own and try to bridge the gaps, right? What do I have to have in place so that I can so I can delay my benefits? Okay, now another question that I get all the time is, what happens if I am receiving my benefits and I want to work? This is a very important question because if you are filing early and you're thinking to work, you might be compromising your benefit. You have to be careful. If you filing early at 62, 63, just before your full retirement age, for every $2 that you earn above this amount, this is $17,640 per year. If you make above that number, for every $2 that you make, one will be taken out. And that's significant because let's say that you make $25,000 that year. That's right above that number, right? And so the difference, let's say that it's 15, for all that 15, $7,000 goes away because for every $2 you have to give away the other half. That's a lot. So one has to be careful and sure about what you're doing. And a lot of people also maintain this because maybe by then I just want to have a part-time job, right? And with my part-time job, I can keep the $17,640 and there's no consequences. You're not subject to that earning test that reduces your benefit.
So that money, if you're over that money, it won't later on come to you?
Exactly. If you maintain that $17,640, you will be absolutely okay. Your benefits will continue to go as usual. Nothing will change. You will not subject to the earning test. But if you go over this number, and this is, by the way, earned income. It means you're earning it with your sweat. It doesn't mean you get rental income. It doesn't mean you get income from, that's not it. It's about working income. It's working, you're going to work and you're contributing out of your paycheck, just like in the old days, they contribute to your Social Security. And so it's about work, not income. You can be having a part-time and making $15,000, and maybe on top of it you get your rent, maybe on top of it you get your pension, or maybe you get a 401k, or maybe you get an IRA, maybe you get some dividends. It doesn't matter. It's not your income. It's your earnings. Make sense? Yes, only your earnings. So if you file early, then this is what happens. But if you file, if you're working during your retirement age, that year when you're your full retirement age, then for every $3 that you make, only one goes to, it's taken away from you. And that cap goes up to $46,920 per year. But let me give you a little trick, a loophole that a lot of people don't know about, and it gets a little tricky. So they do this calculation, you see, per year. But what if I am thinking, all right, this year I made $49,000 and I'm going to tap into my Social Security in December, right? The last month of the year. Are they going to include that whole year in my earning record? Or how does it work? Well, it turns out that you have one grace period. You can actually ask the Social Security once, only once, to do the calculations, not on a yearly basis, but on a monthly basis. So even if you made a lot of money during the year and you file in December, you're basically saying, start the earning test in December. Don't count me on a yearly basis, because for the whole month of December, I earn nothing. So if you count me on a monthly basis, I will be fine. But if you count me on a yearly basis, I'm not in a good shape. So there's that exception. You can ask the Social Security program to only once to have this earning test applied to you on a monthly basis. That's a secret. A lot of people don't know that. It's really not a secret, but it makes a big difference, right? Because one allows you, the other doesn't, but it's the same thing. Okay.
So when you say they take it away, where does it go?
So very good question. Are you going to lose that money, or is it going to come back to you, or is it going to the widows and the children of other people? Well, if you pass this amount and they've taken your money, you were subject to the earnings test, and they reduce your benefit and they reduce your earnings, it all comes back to you, but it's going to come back to you in small amounts. They do recalculate this. All right, so eventually it's not going into a black hole. You're not going to lose your money, but you're not going to see it in a lump sum the way it was taken. Okay. And then the next question that people want to know is, how is Social Security taxed, right? And it really depends. Are you paying as a single head of a household? Are you paying as a married, filing jointly, or are you filing separately? That will determine what your taxation is. Most people today, pay about 85% of taxes, because as far as taxes, it doesn't matter your earnings. Everything, all your income adds up, and that's how Uncle Sam taxes you. So for taxes, your rental income, half of your Social Security goes into it. If you're working, then you work. Any pensions, if you have some dividend, whatever it is that you have that's for later on, everything goes into the pile and it's added. So let me take a step back. But if you're a single head of a household, and you are basically making over 34 in that total income. Remember, everything that, any cent that was there on the table, whether you work or not, it's put onto the table, half of your Social Security, and then if you make over $34,000 for that year, 85% of your benefit will be taxed. So it's only 15% tax-free. And if you're married, about 44. Let me give you an example. Let's pretend that Richard and Susan, they basically bring to the table an income of 55, right? That could be maybe rental income and whatever income. Plus, they also get another $10,000, and their Social Security combined between husband and wife adds up to 30. Altogether, that's about 95. For taxing your Social Security, you see only half of your yearly amount is accounted. And so doing the numbers, $80,000 is above that limit, so 85% of your Social Security is taxed. Most people pay about 85% of Social Security. That's kind of the statistics. Okay, so that's federal taxes. What about state taxes? State taxes is different for different states. In Hawaii, we are exempt from state taxes, so there's no payments of state taxes for us. Yay, right? But not the other states. So when we talk about Social Security, it's not always about the numbers, right? There are other considerations to make. And one important one is health concerns. I was telling you about this client that we said we were going to delay until 70, and then out of the blue, he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Now everything changed. So health concerns would also help you. And if you have a health concern, waiting does not make sense. What are you going to wait for, right? Because if you wait, even if you earn that 32%, it's not going to go into your spouse. So your spouse is not going to see that. She or he will only get half of what you get at your full retirement age. So it won't make sense. And also, another aspect is, do you need the income right away? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes out of the blue things happen. I had a client also that he got into a lawsuit that changed everything, right? So making assessments. And then do you have access to other assets as well? Some people say yes, like I was telling you about this guy, he has his, it was a question of beer money. As far as his Social Security, he was receiving a pension, and so he was saying, okay, so, I could live on my pension, does it make sense for me to delay? And he calls it beer money, but he doesn't even drink beer. And then the other question is your relationship with your work, which is very touchy. Some people, the whole idea of going to work, it just makes you sick. I can't do this anymore. Other people basically say, what work? This is my calling. I'll work until I die, right? So if you work until you die, your needs are very different, right? It's going to be a different decision making. So one size fits one. And when you share about the Social Security presentation with your friends, be careful, because if you say, hey, you can do this and you can do the restricted application, but maybe you can because you were born just before January 1st, 1954, but your friend was born January 2nd, and guess what? Done. So she might go like, okay, doesn't qualify anymore, right? So it's not the same. And then the other question, and this is a little bit about retirement now, not just Social Security, where does Social Security fall in your life? I invite you to look into your retirement a little bit this way. First, we make a list of all your basic expenses, the things that will never change, like food. You're always going to spend money on food. You're probably always going to have some kind of expense on transportation. And after you have that list, you have to determine what sources of income you can count on for sure, that are never going to change, that are predictable, and then what others are not needed, and they can be funded by income that's not predictable. Bottom line, Social Security, annuities, and pension fall under predictable income, and they should be the sources that cover your basic needs. Okay? I'm going to move a little faster now. So now, what can you do today after listening to this presentation? First thing you should do is create your account in your Social Security. Go to the website, look at your record. Now you know what to look for, right? Make sure you're on track on your own behalf, making sure that there are no mistakes. Verify your Social Security statement. Know your full retirement age to the month. Also, think about the things that go into your decision making. Are you in good health? Who depends upon your record? Are you single? Are you married? Do you have an ex? All those questions. And then, if you're still working, consider if you want to stop or not. And then you can project your needs. And also talk to the professionals, to the accountants. If you're still working and you tap into your Social Security, that can change your taxes incredibly. So a little bit of early planning would help. You can talk to me. I help you with this and other retirement planning. But just to the end, there's a lot of people that are do-it-yourselfers, and that's a really good thing. But because this is such an important decision and you only have one shot at it, I would say, go for a second opinion. It will just validate whether you're on the right track or not. If you're not a do-it-yourselfer, I do offer a free review. And if you like this presentation and would like to share this with other people and you see value in sharing, you can also invite me. That's it. I want to answer one more question that I think is very important that people ask me all the time. What if I beyond my full retirement age, and I have these wonderful job opportunities? Sometimes that happens. Will I be penalized in any way? And I want to tell you, no. Once you pass your full retirement age, you can work all you want, and your benefit will not be reduced and nothing will change. Okay. After you pass your full retirement age, no problem. You just have to watch for those years before. Okay? Very good. So that's the presentation. If you have any questions now, do we have time for questions? Yeah, we have a little time for questions. So if there's anything you want to know, yes.
One question.
Yeah.
Say you go on Social Security for a while and then you decide when you go back to work, can you stop and then contribute again and turn it off for a while and then come back in again onto it or not?
Okay, that's a very good question. So the question is, you're already receiving your Social Security, you go back to work, you stop it, right? And then can you come back and later turn it on again? And the answer is no, you cannot do that. There was a time when you were able to suspend, but that no longer is the case. Once you file, and you receive the benefits. Yes.
I thought you said you had a year to.
Well, that's true. Yeah, well, so take that into account. So once you file, you have a year to withdraw your application. But if you are, for the months that you receive your benefit, you have to send that back.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that will reset you to 0. But once you pass that year, that's it. It becomes a permanent decision.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's kind of personal. I don't know. I'm a self-employed person, an artist, and my income fluctuates depending on people's need for art. You know, right now they don't need it. Okay? Guns and canned food is what people want now. So survivalist stuff. Nobody wants a pretty picture on their bunker wall. They want a schematic of an AK-47. I might just do that as an art form in the future. I don't know, you know. But I've been paying $50 a month to the state tax for a couple, maybe 3 years now, as a fine through having a little bit of discrepancy in the early 2000s from not paying taxes for a certain period of time. I don't know how many else this category falls into, but you said no state tax. But I'm paying $50 a month to the state tax.
Is that because of your Social Security?
Yeah.
Your benefit on the Social Security? Now, did you work in the state of Hawaii?
Yeah, oh yeah. As self-employed.
You're self-employed.
Yeah,
Okay. So,
But I get half my spouse's income, pension, because she reached retirement age. Unfortunately for me, we only lived together for a year, but fortunately for me, she didn't divorce me until 10 years, 2 months, and 3 days after.
oh, wow, you made it. So you're receiving your ex-spousal, which is more than yours. Well, congratulations, that's a very good strategy.
It must have been a good year.
Yes, about your question for state taxes, so that's what I mean as far as like corrections and mistakes.
Yeah.
The Social Security Office is very accurate in numbers, but they make mistakes. So it falls on you to be able to follow up with them and to be able to make sure that the corrections are made. You have to call them and basically tell them, I know that I owe taxes on my federal share of the taxes, but as far as state taxes, there's no obligation, so why am I being charged? Yeah?
I think it's general excise tax, actually.
That would not be your Social Security benefit, though. That would be something else. Yeah.
I do pay them $50 a month.
You might want to clarify that. If it's your Social Security benefit only, if that's it, you should not pay any taxes on that.
And the problem is, the amount that I owe never goes down because of the interest. So I pay $50 a month, it stays at $14,000 or something that I owe. And it's always that amount.
Always that. I would say just give them a call. That way you have that question more clarified.
I said, how do you sleep at night?
Yes.
Can you clarify if you turn your full Social Security age in the middle of the year, say June,
Yes.
and you worked all up till June, then do you have to watch how much income you make if you decide to take your benefit right at your birthday?
Okay, that's a very good question. Yes. So what happens sometimes is when you're doing the calculation, the first year of your benefit, it's always skewed because it's based on your date of birth, right? So like if you were born, let's say in February, and you file, forget about when you were born. Let's say that you file in February, and you begin to receive your benefit in April. Then you have April, May, June, July, August, September, all the way to the end of the year. But the first year, you're still not receiving that full year. You're only received for the months that you began. But the following year is more representative of what your benefit will be from that point forward, and the only thing that's going to change is going to be the cost of living adjustment, right? That is going to increase on a year-to-year basis or every other year, depending on how the Social Security catches up. Does that answer your question?
What I was wondering is if, because you have the ceilings of what you can earn
Yes.
without any kind of penalty. Well, what
Oh, while working, you mean? Okay. Yeah, that's a very, very careful decision to make, because let's say that you're planning to file in December, right? And Social Security does all the recalculations in January. Everything falls in January. Even if something changed in June, you're not going to see that until January. Every recalculation, for example, say that you suddenly had a very good year, and I told you that the benefit is calculated based on the highest 35 years, right? But let's say that this year was one of your highest years. When are they going to increase that in my benefit? Is it going to be right this month, or is it going to be annually? When am I going to see this? You're going to see this in January, no matter when this happened, because the Social Security does all the calculations in January. And so if you want to file and you're considering working, and now you're worried and saying, am I going to be subject to the earning test? Because up to November, I made over $17,000, but then I didn't work in December. November, December, I didn't work. And I should not be, right? Because if you did not work for November and December, you should not be subject to the earning test. So in that situation, you already stopped working, you have 2 months with no work, you have a one-time opportunity for a grace period. You can call the Social Security and basically say, I'm using my one-time opportunity to do these monthly instead of annually. And then you're off that earnings test. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, when you full retirement age, 67.
Yes.
And you retire.
Yes.
And then you can make as much as you want.
All the money that you want.
Okay, and it doesn't get that extra tax on it when you turn 66.
When you already passed your full retirement age and suddenly you get into this great opportunity, now you're not subject to the earning test anymore. You have no limit, but you will still taxes. You will still be paying taxes. And then people sometimes want to know, I already passed my full retirement age. I'm doing something that I finally love to do. I'm making money. Why am I still contributing to Social Security? And where is that money going? Right? Because you're already receiving your benefit. And when you look at your paycheck, there's all this percent that's going into Social Security, and you're wondering, where's this going? Am I going to see this back? Yes. If that is a high, one of your high years, remember the 35 years they cherry pick, and it happens to fall in that high number, they will recalculate that in January, and then you will see that added to your monthly benefit gradually.
So it would take place, it would X out one of the lower years.
Exactly. It will replace the zeros. It will replace some of the lower numbers. Exactly.
And that's why I got a raise.
And that's why you got a raise. Correct. That's right.
Is there a maximum amount that people get? I mean,
Yes, there's a maximum amount that people get, and if you were to calculate to weighting all the way to 70, let's say, which is you get all the delay credits, and then what's the maximum amount that Social Security can give you? I could be wrong on the exact numbers, but I believe it's 3,000 and maybe 400 or 500 something, and about 3,500. Nobody gets more than that. Yeah, because the Social Security program was designed to basically help you cover your basic needs, about 40%. And so if you haven't contributed too much, you probably get the most benefit. Yeah. Any other questions?
I want to say thank you, Liz.
Yeah.